The moment the elevator doors slid shut, Leora Masani realized she had made a terrible mistake. She had pressed the wrong button. Instead of the lobby, the lift was climbing, rising toward the penthouse floor of a building she had no business being in. And standing 3 feet away from her, watching her with the kind of stillness that only came from absolute power, was Rennick Dragon. She knew who he was. Everyone in the city of Aldenmere knew who he was. The man whose name made judges go quiet and politicians sweat through their collars. The man who ran half the waterfront, half the construction contracts, and according to whispers, half the police department. He was not looking at his phone. He was not staring at the ceiling. He was looking directly at her, not her face, not her body, her hands. She followed his gaze down and realized what he was seeing: the raw red skin across her knuckles, the cracked cuticles, the faint chemical stain on her fingertips from industrial cleaning solution, the hands of someone who scrubbed floors for a living. She pulled them behind her back. "Too late," he said. His voice was low, unhurried, like a man who had never been interrupted in his life. "Excuse me? You tried to hide your hands. That means you noticed me noticing. That means you care what I think." She said nothing. "And the fact that you are not talking means you are smart enough to know that saying the wrong thing to someone like me in a closed elevator is a bad idea." The doors opened at the 42nd floor. His floor. He stepped out, then paused and looked back at her. She was still frozen, heart hammering, hands clasped behind her back like a schoolgirl caught stealing. "You work in this building," he said. It was not a question. She nodded once. "Which floor?" 14. "Who do you clean for?" "Bellacourt and Associates." He made a small sound, not quite a laugh. "Nadia Bellacourt. She lets her cleaning staff use the main elevators?" Leora swallowed. "I got turned around. It is my first week." Rennick Dragon studied her for a long moment, those dark eyes cataloging everything about her, the way a man catalogs the details of a contract he is about to negotiate. Then he nodded, almost to himself, and walked away. The elevator doors closed and Leora pressed the button for the lobby with trembling fingers. She leaned against the wall and breathed. "Before you hear what happened next, do me a favor. Drop a comment with the city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story reaches. And if you stay until the end, you will see why this elevator ride changed 2 lives forever." Hit that like button and let us begin. Leora Masani had not always cleaned other people's offices. 3 years ago, she had been a graduate student in behavioral psychology at Harrowell University, one of only 4 students in the country accepted into the Advanced Research Fellowship that year. She studied how people in positions of extreme power made moral decisions, what happened to empathy when someone had the ability to destroy lives without consequence. The irony was not lost on her. Her research had been promising. Her advisor, Dr. Yael Stenberg, had called it the most original framework she had seen in 20 years. Leora had been on track to complete her doctorate by 26. Then her younger brother, Tomasz, got sick. Not a cold, not something that passed. Leukemia. Aggressive, expensive, relentless. The treatments were not covered by the kind of insurance a graduate student could afford. Their mother, Hannah, had worked 2 jobs to help, but she had passed away 2 years ago, leaving Leora as the only family Tomasz had left. Their father had left before Leora could remember his face. So Leora did what she had always done. She handled it. She dropped out of the program, took every job she could find, and poured every cent into keeping Tomasz alive. Night shifts at a warehouse, weekend work at a laundromat. And now, overnight cleaning at Bellacourt and Associates, a corporate law firm that occupied floors 12 through 16 of the Aldenmere Meridian Tower. She had been invisible there, perfectly, blissfully invisible. The lawyers left by 8. She arrived at 9. She vacuumed their offices, emptied their trash, wiped their desks, and vanished before dawn. She never used the main elevators. She knew the service entrance, the back stairs, the routes that kept the cleaning staff out of sight and out of mind. But tonight, her first time on the 42nd floor crew rotation, she had gotten lost, had walked into the wrong elevator, had pressed the wrong button, and had locked eyes with Rennick Dragon. She told herself it did not matter. She would never see him again. A man like that forgot faces faster than he made enemies. She was nobody. A cleaning woman with cracked hands and a dead fellowship. She would go home, sleep for 4 hours, visit Tomasz at the hospital, and come back tomorrow to clean the same desks and empty the same trash. Nothing had changed. She was wrong. 3 days later, Leora arrived for her shift and found a note taped to the supply closet door. It was typed on cream-colored cardstock, the kind that cost more per sheet than she made in an hour. It read, "Miss Masani, you are requested at the 42nd floor at 9:15 this evening. Use the main elevator." It was unsigned, but she knew. Leora stood outside the elevator for 6 minutes before pressing the button. She had considered not going at all. Had considered calling in sick, quitting, disappearing into another cleaning job at another building where nobody on the top floor knew her name. But the note had said, "Requested, not required." And Leora Masani had learned the hard way that the only thing more dangerous than walking toward power was running from it. The 42nd floor was different at night. During the day, she imagined it hummed with the energy of deals being made and threats being delivered. At 9:15 in the evening, it was silent. Marble floors the color of smoke. Low lighting that made everything feel like the inside of a very expensive coffin. A woman sat behind a curved reception desk, mid-50s, silver hair, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked up when Leora stepped off the elevator. "You must be the cleaning girl." Leora bit down on the correction that rose in her throat. "Yes. He is in the study. End of the hall, last door on the left." The woman, whose nameplate read Carmen Solano, went back to her reading without another word. Leora walked the hallway, her sneakers making no sound on the marble. She passed framed photographs that she recognized from news coverage. Rennick Dragon shaking hands with the mayor. Rennick Dragon at a groundbreaking ceremony. Rennick Dragon beside a woman in a red dress at some gala. Neither of them smiling. The study door was open. He was standing at the window, looking out at Aldenmuir's skyline, a glass of something dark in his hand. He did not turn when she entered. "Sit down," he said. There was a chair across from his desk. She sat. He turned, crossed the room, sat behind the desk. Studied her the same way he had in the elevator, like she was a problem he was trying to solve. "Do you know why you are here?" she asked. "No, because I looked you up." Leora felt her stomach drop. "After the elevator, I had someone pull your file from the building's employment records. Leora Masani, 27, overnight cleaning staff, hired through Meridian Janitorial Services. Formerly a doctoral fellow at Harrowell University, behavioral psychology. Left the program 3 years ago. He recited it the way someone reads a stock ticker. Facts without feeling." She said nothing. "You study how powerful people make decisions," he said. Studied. Past tense. "Why did you stop?" "That is not your business." He almost smiled. "Everything in this building is my business. I own it." The silence stretched. She could lie. Could tell him she lost interest. Decided academia was not for her. But something in his expression told her he already knew. He had looked her up. He probably knew about Tomasz too. "My brother is sick," she said flatly. "I needed money. Not grants. Not eventually. Now. So I left." He nodded. "Leukemia. Tomasz, age 22. Currently at St. Martin's, Ward 7. How much does he owe?" Leora's jaw tightened. "How much do you owe?" That is not why I am here. No, you are here because I have a proposal. There it was. The word that changed the shape of the room. What kind of proposal? I have a business dinner in 3 weeks. Very exclusive. The people at that table will include a federal judge, 2 senators, the CEO of Aldenmuir's largest bank, and a woman named Cordelia Ashworth who has spent the last decade trying to destroy me socially because I would not sell her husband a piece of waterfront property. He paused. I would like you to attend as my guest. The words hung in the air like smoke. Why? Because you are the only person I have met in 5 years who looked at me in a closed elevator and did not try to impress me, did not try to sell me something, did not look away. You just stood there with your hands behind your back and said nothing. That is interesting to me. You want to bring your cleaning lady to a dinner full of senators and judges? She said slowly. To prove a point? To shock someone? To win some game I do not understand? He leaned back. Maybe all of those things. Does the reason matter? Yes, she said. It matters to me. Most people do not ask me why. Most people do not clean your floors either. A beat of silence. Then he laughed. Short. Surprised. Genuine. Fair enough. I will go, Leora said. On one condition. You are negotiating with me? I am telling you what it will cost. You pay off my brother's medical debt. All of it. Not a loan. Not a favor I will owe you. A clean slate. That is not a small ask. Neither is what you are asking me to do. You want me to walk into a room where every person will look at my hands and know exactly what I am. You want to use me for whatever chess game you are playing with Cordelia Ashworth. Fine. But my brother walks out of that hospital without a bill hanging over his head. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out his phone, and made a call. Yannick, he said, pull the medical accounts for a Tomasz Masani at St. Marin's. Pay the balance in full. Tonight. He ended the call without waiting for confirmation. Done. I want it in writing. You will have the paperwork by morning. Leora stood. She did not thank him. Gratitude was a currency in his world, and she was not about to start spending it. She walked to the door, paused. One more thing. I will not pretend to be something I am not. If someone asks who I am, I will tell them. He studied her. That could make things difficult. For you or for me? Both. Then we will both deal with it. She left, walked back down the marble hallway, past Carmen who did not look up, into the elevator, back to the 14th floor. She picked up her mop, her bucket, her spray bottle. She went back to work. But her hands were not shaking anymore. The next morning, Leora did not go home. She went to the hospital. Tomasz was awake, sitting up in bed, looking thinner than the last time but alert. His eyes tracked her as she came in, that same sharp intelligence that ran in the family. You look like you have not slept, he said. I have not. Then go home. I need to tell you something first. She sat in the chair beside his bed. The vinyl squeaked. The room smelled like antiseptic and institutional coffee. Your medical bills are paid. All of them. Tomasz went still. What? Every balance. Every outstanding charge. It is done. How? Someone paid them. Who? A man I work for? In exchange for what? That was the question she had been asking herself all night. In exchange for what exactly? One dinner, supposedly. But she knew better. Nothing with a man like Rennick Dragon was ever just one thing. One dinner, she said. He needs a guest for a business event. That is all. Tomasz stared at her. You are a terrible liar. I know. But that is all I can tell you right now. She stayed for an hour, then took the bus home. Her apartment was a studio above a dry cleaner's on Vasek Street, the cheapest rent in Aldenmuir's East Quarter. One room, a mattress on the floor, a desk she had rescued from a sidewalk. Books stacked against every wall because she could not afford shelves, and could not stop buying books even when she could not afford food. She sat at the desk and opened her laptop. She had 3 weeks to prepare for a world she had only ever studied from the outside. She started with Rennick Dragan himself. He was 41, self-made, if you could call it that, when the foundation was laid in violence. His father, Milos Dragan, had built the family empire through construction contracts secured with intimidation and political corruption. Rennick had taken over at 23 when Milos died, and had spent 18 years transforming the operation into something that looked legitimate on the surface. Real estate development, hospitality ventures, a charitable foundation that funded youth athletic programs. But investigative journalists had spent years picking at the edges. Connections to money laundering, contracts awarded through bribery, nothing had ever stuck. Rennick Dragan was careful. Or he was lucky. Or he was both. She moved on to the dinner itself. The Aldenmere Heritage Dinner, held annually at the Castellane Hotel. 40 years of tradition. Black tie. Invitation only. The charity component funded arts programs in public schools, which Leora noted was exactly the kind of cause that made wealthy people feel virtuous without requiring them to change anything about their lives. Then she found Cordelia Ashworth. Blonde, early 50s, the kind of beauty that had been maintained with the same precision and expense as a vintage car. Married to Harland Ashworth, whose real estate company had been Rennick's primary competitor for waterfront contracts for a decade. Cordelia sat on the boards of 4 major charities. She chaired the Heritage Dinner Committee. She was photographed at every event that mattered, always positioned at the center. Leora dug deeper. Found a society column from 4 months ago referencing Cordelia's public comments about Rennick's last appearance at a charity auction. She had called his date, a tech executive named Priya Okafor, wildly out of her depth. Priya had reportedly left the event in tears. Rennick had left alone. So this was about Cordelia, about settling a score, about using Leora as a weapon to prove something to a woman who collected social victories the way other people collected art. Leora closed that tab. She was not surprised. Power games always needed pawns. But she had no intention of being one. She opened a new document and started writing. Not about dresses or etiquette or how to hold a champagne glass. She wrote about what she knew. Power dynamics, dominance displays in social hierarchies, how alpha figures in closed groups maintained control through exclusion rituals, through language designed to signal belonging, through the weaponization of manners as a filtering mechanism. She had studied this at Harrowell, had written 60 pages of a dissertation on exactly this subject before her life had cratered. The theory was still there, intact, waiting. She had never expected to test it in the field. She thought about Dr. Stenberg, her old advisor. "You have a gift for seeing what people hide," Yael had told her once. "Most psychologists study behavior. You study the architecture underneath it, the scaffolding that holds the performance together." Leora had not spoken to Yael since leaving the program, had been too ashamed to call, too exhausted to explain. But now, sitting in her studio with 3 weeks until she walked into a room designed to crush people like her, she realized she needed that scaffolding more than ever. Not someone else's, her own. She had spent years dismantling herself to survive, shrinking her vocabulary so coworkers would not think she was showing off, keeping her eyes down so supervisors would not feel challenged, making herself small and agreeable so that the world would leave her alone long enough to keep her brother alive. That woman could not survive the Heritage Dinner, so Leora would have to find the version of herself that existed before all of this. The researcher who could walk into any room and read every person in it within minutes. The woman who understood power not because she had it, but because she had spent years mapping its anatomy. She pulled a book from the stack beside her mattress, a worn copy of Goffman's The Presentation of Self in Everyday Life, the text that had first made her fall in love with psychology. She read until dawn. Then she slept for 3 hours, dreamless and deep, and woke with the beginning of a plan forming behind her eyes. The paperwork arrived the next morning. A courier in a black jacket handed Leora a manila envelope outside her apartment building. Inside was a single document on legal letterhead, confirming that all outstanding medical balances for Tomasz Masani at St. Marin's Hospital had been paid in full. No conditions, no repayment schedule, no strings visible to the naked eye. Leora read it 4 times, then folded it and put it in the drawer beside her bed, where she kept things that mattered. That afternoon, she visited Tomasz. He was sitting up, color slightly better, arguing with a nurse about the quality of the pudding. "I checked with the billing office," he said. "It is real. The balance is 0. "Yes. Leora, who is this man?" "He is someone who needs something from me." "And you trust him?" "I trust the paperwork." "That is not the same thing." "No, it is not." "Be careful," he said. "People who pay debts that large usually expect payments that large in return." "I know." "Do you?" "Yes, Tomasz. I study people like him. That is literally what I train to do. You study them from behind a desk." "This is not a desk." He was right. But the alternative was watching her brother drown in medical debt while she scrubbed toilets on the 14th floor of a building owned by the man who had just erased that debt with a phone call. The equation was ugly, but the math worked. She left the hospital and took the bus to Harrowell University. The campus looked exactly the same, which felt like a personal insult. The world should have changed as much as she had. Dr. Yael Stenberg's office was on the 3rd floor. The door was open. Leora stood in the hallway for 2 full minutes before knocking. Yael looked up from a stack of papers. She was 61 now, silver-streaked hair, reading glasses perched on her forehead. She squinted at Leora, and then her face opened. "Leora. My God." She stood, came around the desk, pulled Leora into a hug that smelled like coffee and old books. Leora had not been hugged in months. She held on longer than she meant to. They sat. Yael poured tea from a pot that had been old when Leora was a student. "How is Tomasz?" "Stable. The bills are handled." Leora told her everything. The elevator, the note, the proposal. The medical debt wiped clean in exchange for one dinner with a man who frightened most of the city. Yael listened without interrupting, which was her gift. "You know what he is doing," Yael said. "He is using you as a social disruption, a variable introduced into a controlled environment to destabilize an adversary." "Yes." "And you are going anyway." "Yes." "Why?" "Because my brother is alive, and his bills are paid, and in 3 weeks I will sit at a table with the kind of people I spent years studying from a distance. This is field research, Yael. Involuntary, dangerous, probably stupid. But field research." Yael smiled, that same half-smile she gave when a student said something simultaneously brilliant and reckless. "Can I come back? To the program? Your credits are still valid. Your research was exceptional. We could structure a return around your current circumstances. Night courses, independent study, a revised timeline. It would not be easy. Nothing has been easy in a long time. I have gotten used to it." When Leora left the campus, the sky was turning orange over Aldenmere, and something in her chest felt different. Lighter. Not hope, exactly. More like the space where hope could fit if she cleared enough room for it. Back at her apartment, she stood in front of the small mirror above the bathroom sink. She looked at herself objectively. A woman who had learned to slouch so she would not stand out. Who kept her voice low and her opinions lower? Who dressed in clothes chosen specifically to communicate nothing? She had built herself into a ghost. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, made eye contact with her own reflection, held it. This was the woman who would walk into the heritage dinner. With these hands and this history and this mind that could take apart a room simply by paying attention. She started practicing. The way she walked through the building on her way to her cleaning shift, spine straight, eyes forward. The way she spoke to the shift supervisor, direct and unhurried. The way she held silence when someone expected her to fill it. The other cleaners noticed. Gabriella, who worked the 16th floor, stopped her in the break room one night. "You are different lately." "Am I?" "Standing taller, talking different." "Something happen?" "Yes," Leora said. "Something happened." Gabriella waited for more. Leora offered nothing. The silence sat between them like a dare. Good, Leora thought. She was remembering how to hold space without apologizing for it. 12 days before the dinner, Rennick sent for her again. Same typed note on cream cardstock. Same 42nd floor. Same marble hallway. But this time, Carmen at the reception desk looked at Leora differently. Not with respect exactly. With curiosity. Leora found him in the study, standing over architectural blueprints. He looked tired. The permanent composure was thinner than usual. "You have been walking differently," he said without looking up. "Excuse me? Building security cameras? You have changed how you move through the hallways. Less apologetic. More deliberate. Are you watching me?" "I watch everything. It is how I have stayed alive." He sat behind his desk. "We need to discuss the dinner. The guest list. 40 at the main table. Another 150 in the broader event. Federal Judge Montrose and his wife. Senators Callaway and Petrick. Harland and Cordelia Ashworth. Caspian Rourke, CEO of Aldenmere First National. And you. And me." "You do not seem nervous." Most people did not spend years studying dominance hierarchies in closed social systems. "I am not most people, Rennick." It was the first time she had used his name without the mister, without the distance. He noticed. She saw it register in the slight shift of his posture. "My assistant wants to arrange a stylist for you," he said. "Wardrobe, hair, the full treatment." "No. Leora." "No. If I show up in something your stylist picked, I will be wearing a costume. They will see through it in seconds. These people have spent their entire lives calibrating their radar for authenticity. A borrowed dress is a neon sign that says, 'I do not belong here.'" She met his eyes. "Trust me or do not. But do not dress me up like a doll for your dinner party." "Cordelia Ashworth," Leora said. "Tell me about her. I want to know why she hates you enough to publicly humiliate the women you bring to events." Because I told her no. To everything. Her husband wanted the Southport contract. I refused. She wanted me to endorse her charity foundation. I refused. Cordelia Ashworth does not hear no. She hears war. And the women? The women are collateral. Cordelia cannot hurt me directly, so she hurts anyone standing near me. It is displacement. You are using psychology terminology. You left a stack of textbooks on your desk the last time I was here. Either you are studying up or you are trying to impress me. Both. "I need to ask you something," she said, "and I need the truth. Do they know you are bringing your cleaning woman?" "Some of them know I am bringing someone unexpected. They do not know the details." He paused. "Marcus Callaway, the senator. He and I had dinner last week. He asked about my guest. I told him it was someone who would make things interesting. He took that as a challenge. Bet me $5,000 that whoever I brought would not last past the appetizers." $5,000. She kept her voice flat. "On whether I would humiliate myself. On whether you would crack under pressure." Leora moved to the window. Aldenmere spread below them, glittering and indifferent. "You know what the funny thing is?" she said. "You think you are using me? And maybe you are. But you are also giving me something nobody else has offered since I left Harrowell." "What?" "A room full of test subjects. I wrote 60 pages about how powerful people weaponize social rituals, but it was all theory. You are giving me a chance to test every hypothesis I ever had. In real time. He stared at her. You are going to study them. I am going to survive them. There is a difference. She grabbed her jacket from the chair. I will see you at the dinner, Rennick. I will arrive on my own. Because if I arrive with you, I am your accessory. If I arrive alone, I am a person. She left before he could respond. With 9 days left, Leora went to see Gabriella. Not Gabriella the co-worker. Gabriella the woman who, before she cleaned office buildings in Aldenmere, had been a seamstress in Tbilisi who dressed diplomats' wives for state functions. Leora had learned this months ago during a break room conversation that Gabriella probably had not intended to become personal. A comment about a button on Leora's jacket being sewn wrong. A correction offered with the automatic precision of someone who had done the work professionally. Leora had filed it away the way she filed everything, quietly and completely. She found Gabriella after their shift. I need a favor. What kind of favor? I need a dress. What kind of dress? The kind you used to make. For important occasions. Gabriella studied her with professional eyes. Where are you going? A dinner. At the Castellane Hotel? Who are you going with? Someone important? How important? Leora just looked at her. Gabriella understood. I do not have a workshop anymore, Gabriella said. I do not have money for materials, Leora replied. So we are both working with limitations. Come to my apartment tomorrow. Bring whatever fabric you have. What Leora had was her mother's winter coat. The good one. The one Hannah had brought from Crevettes when she immigrated 30 years ago, before Leora was born. Deep garnet wool, lined with silk that had somehow survived 3 decades of careful storage. Hannah had worn it exactly 4 times, weddings and funerals, the occasions she considered worthy of her best. Leora had not touched the coat since Hannah's death. It lived in a garment bag in the back of her closet, smelling faintly of cedar and the perfume Hannah used to wear, on days she wanted to feel like the woman she had been before. Immigration reshaped her into someone smaller and quieter. Gabriella took it from the garment bag with the reverence of someone who recognized quality. This wool, she said, running her fingers along the grain. This is real, not synthetic, not blended, real Kravitz wool. My mother brought it from home, and you want me to make it into a dress? I want us to make it into something new, something that is mine. They worked together for 6 days. Gabriella measured and cut with hands that remembered their skill even after years of holding mops instead of shears. The design was simple and unapologetic. No decoration, no embellishment. Clean lines, strong shoulders. A silhouette that said nothing about wealth and everything about intention. Gabriella lined it with the original silk, preserving the layer that had sat closest to Hannah's body. On the final day, Leora stood in Gabriella's bathroom, the only mirror large enough to see the full effect. The garnet was striking without being loud. The fit was exact. Leora looked at herself and saw something she had not seen in a long time. Not a cleaning woman, not a dropout. A woman who had been taken apart by circumstance and reassembled by choice, and the seams were showing on purpose because the seams were the point. You will make them uncomfortable, Gabriella said from the doorway. That is the idea. Gabriella crossed her arms. These people you are going to sit with. I have cleaned their houses. I have cleaned their offices. I have heard what they say when they think no one is listening. They are not kind. They do not forgive people who make them feel small. I know. Then go show them what invisible looks like when it decides to be seen. The Castellane Hotel looked like it had been designed to remind people of their insignificance. Stone columns flanked the entrance, A red carpet stretched from the curb to the lobby doors, flanked by photographers whose cameras flashed every time a black car deposited another beautiful, expensive person onto the pavement. Leora arrived at 8:15. She did not arrive in a black car. She took the crosstown bus, walked 6 blocks in flats, and changed into heels in the coffee shop restroom across the street. She checked herself once in the mirror. The garnet dress, hair down in its natural waves, her mother's simple gold chain at her throat. She crossed the street and walked toward the entrance. A photographer raised his camera, then lowered it when he could not place her. She was not in his index of faces that mattered. Not yet. The lobby hit her like a wall of light and sound. Crystal chandeliers throwing fractured rainbows across marble. Waiters gliding between guests with trays of champagne so pale it looked like liquid platinum. The women wore gowns in black and silver and ivory, safe colors, colors that whispered rather than spoke. Leora's garnet dress did not whisper. It stated. A woman in a silver gown intercepted her within 2 minutes, mid-60s, diamonds at her throat. I do not think we have met. I am Dorothea Castellane. My family owns this hotel. Leora Masani, she said, offering her hand. Dorothea's handshake was brief and diagnostic. Masani. I do not know that name. No family you would know. We are from the East Quarter. Dorothea repeated the words the way someone might repeat the name of a disease. And what brings you to our dinner? I am here with Rennick Dragon. How charming. Well, do enjoy yourself. Leora took a glass of champagne from a passing tray. She did not drink it. It was a prop, a thing to hold so her hands had purpose. She scanned the room the way she had been trained during her research practicums, mapping power clusters, noting who talked to whom and who stood alone. She spotted Rennick near the bar, surrounded by men in tuxedos. He looked different in this context. Larger, more magnetic. Their eyes met across the crowd. Leora raised her glass a fraction of an inch. I am here. I am ready. He started toward her, but Cordelia Ashworth stepped into his path. Blonde hair in an elaborate twist, a gown that screamed custom designer. Cordelia placed her hand on Rennick's arm with the practiced ease of a woman who touched powerful men as a form of territory marking. Before he could extract himself, a voice appeared beside Leora. First time? She turned. A man her age, kind eyes, a tuxedo that did not quite fit in the shoulders. Press badge clipped to his breast pocket. That obvious? Only because you are the only person in this room who is actually looking at things instead of performing. Cale Mertens. I write for the Aldenmere Register. Leora Masani. You here with someone or just observationally masochistic? Both. Senator Marcus Calloway materialized at her elbow, taller than she expected from photographs. Miss Masani, he said smoothly. I do not believe we have been formally introduced. I understand you are Rennick's guest. And what is it that you do? Here it was, the question designed to sort her into a category they could manage. I clean offices, she said. Overnight shift. Floors 12 through 16 of the Meridian Tower. Marcus Calloway's practiced smile froze. Cale Mertens made a small sound beside her that might have been a suppressed laugh. I am sorry. I clean offices. Mop floors, empty trash, wipe desks. I am on Rennick's cleaning crew. The silence expanded. A woman nearby in emerald earrings turned to stare. Marcus looked around as if waiting for someone to explain the joke. No one did, because it was not a joke. He excused himself without another word and walked directly toward the bar. Leora watched him lean in and whisper. Watched heads turn in her direction. Watched the information spread through the room like ink in water. Kyle whistled low. That was either the bravest or the most reckless thing I have seen at one of these in 10 years. Can it be both? He pulled out a card. If you survive tonight and want to tell your story, Call me. I will be fair. Rennick finally reached her. You told Marcus you clean offices? He said quietly. I told him the truth. We could have said you were a consultant. Something that would. Would what? Make them comfortable? He looked at her. She looked back. Neither blinked. You are right, he said finally. Just please let me know before you drop any more truth on this room, so I can brace myself. No promises. Dinner was announced at 9. Leora found her seat at the head table directly beside Rennick. Across from her sat Cordelia and Harland Ashworth. To her left, Senator Calloway and his wife Vivian. At the far end, Judge Montrose and Caspian Rourke, the banking CEO. Cordelia's eyes tracked the garnet dress, the simple gold chain, the absence of designer labels. What a striking color, she said. Her smile was immaculate and empty. Is that vintage? It was my mother's coat. I had it remade. How sentimental. Most women rent for these occasions. My mother did not believe in borrowing things she could not return. Rennick tells me you work in his building, Cordelia continued. In what capacity? The table went quiet. Everyone wanted to hear Leora confirm the rumor. I clean his offices, Leora said. Overnight. I mop his floors, empty his trash, and wipe down his conference tables. Harland Ashworth set down his water glass too hard. Vivian Calloway developed a sudden interest in her napkin. How refreshing, Cordelia said. Most of the women Rennick brings to these dinners are at least pretending to be something more impressive. I find pretending exhausting. Do you not? The question landed like a slap delivered with perfect manners. Dinner arrived. Something involving quail that Leora suspected cost more per plate than her weekly grocery budget. She ate carefully, pacing herself through courses the way her mother had taught her. Hana Masani may have cleaned houses, but she had been raised in a home where meals were ceremonies and manners were non-negotiable. Leora felt Cordelia watching, waiting for the wrong fork, the clumsy gesture. None came. So Cordelia changed tactics. Tell me, Leora, what exactly does one think about while mopping floors at midnight? Leora set down her fork. Let the silence build until everyone at the table was listening. You would be surprised, she said. When you work in silence while other people sleep, you notice things. You learn who works late because they are dedicated and who works late because they are hiding from the lives they have built. You learn whose office smells like whiskey at 8 in the morning and whose desk has photographs of children they never see. You learn a great deal about people when they forget you exist. Marcus Calloway had gone pale. Cordelia's expression had frozen. That sounds almost like surveillance, Cordelia said. It sounds like paying attention. The difference is intent. And what honesty have you observed about us? Harland Ashworth asked, blunt and suspicious. That you are all performing, Leora said. Every one of you. You are performing generosity by attending a charity dinner that will raise money you will never notice missing. You are performing friendship with people you speak about viciously when they leave the room. You are performing success while most of you are terrified that someone will find out how hollow it feels. The silence had weight. Physical, pressing. That is incredibly presumptuous, Vivian said. Is it? Or is it just uncomfortable? You do not know us, Cordelia said, her voice low. You have been in our world for 2 hours. I have been in your world for years, Leora said quietly, cleaning it, watching it, listening to it when it thought no one was paying attention. And I can tell you that the loneliest people I have ever encountered are the ones sitting at tables exactly like this one. Vivienne, Cordelia said, turning to the senator's wife. Are we really going to sit here and be lectured by the cleaning woman? But it was Judge Montrose who responded, his deep voice cutting through the tension. I would like to hear more, actually. It is the most interesting thing anyone has said at one of these dinners in 20 years. The dam broke during dessert. Cordelia had excused herself from the table halfway through the main course. Leora watched her circulate the room, stopping at table after table, gestures sharp, smile rigid. She was building a coalition, gathering allies, preparing a counterattack. Leora expected it, had studied it. The response of a dominant figure to an unexpected challenge was predictable. First dismissal, then ridicule, then recruitment, then public retaliation designed to restore the hierarchy. The retaliation came during the closing speech. Cordelia had chaired the Heritage Dinner for 11 years, which meant the remarks were hers. She stood at the podium, radiant and controlled, and delivered 5 minutes of polished gratitude before pivoting. "This dinner exists because of shared values," she said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "Shared commitments, shared understanding of what it means to contribute. We all come here because we have earned our place through years of dedication and service." She paused, letting her gaze land on Leora's table. When someone enters a space like this without that shared history, without that earned trust, it can be destabilizing. And while I believe in inclusivity, I also believe that respect must be mutual. That you cannot walk into a house and criticize the foundations while standing on the floor. She was not naming Leora. She did not need to. Every eye in the room made the connection. Cordelia smiled. "Let us raise a glass to another wonderful year." Glasses lifted. Leora's stayed on the table. She stood up. The movement was quiet. She did not push back her chair dramatically. She simply stood. But in a room conditioned to watch for social disruption, it was louder than a gunshot. "May I say something?" Her voice was calm, projected with the clarity of someone who had once lectured to classrooms before she had scrubbed floors. Cordelia's smile went rigid. "This is not really the format for..." "For what? For someone like me to speak?" The entire ballroom went still. Every face in the room turned toward a woman in garnet wool standing alone at the head table. Cale Mertens had materialized near the wall, notebook open. "You talked about earned place," Leora continued. "So let me ask you something, Cordelia. What have you earned? You sit on 4 charity boards. You raise millions for arts education. That matters. But when was the last time you sat with a student who could not read? When was the last time you used your power to help someone who could not help you back?" Cordelia's face went white. "How dare you? I dare because I have spent years invisible, watching from the other side of the glass. And from there, I have learned that charity without proximity is just performance. You give money and you receive the feeling of virtue without the inconvenience of actually caring." "You know nothing about me?" Cordelia said, her voice shaking. "You are a cleaning woman who has been in this world for one evening." "I am a behavioral psychologist," Leora said. "I studied power dynamics at Harrowell University before I had to leave to pay my brother's medical bills. I have read every study on how closed communities use rituals of exclusion to maintain dominance. And everything that has happened in this room tonight is a textbook example." Cordelia turned to Rennick. "This is your fault. You brought her here." Rennick stood slowly. "I brought her here," he said. "But I did not orchestrate anything. Leora does not need orchestrating. The point is that you wanted to humiliate me. No. The point is that I wanted to remember what honesty looks like, and Leora is the most honest person I have met in 20 years, including myself." Dorothea Castellane moved forward. The crowd parted for her the way it always parted for institutional authority. "Cordelia," she said, "I think you should step away from the podium. I will not be silenced in my own. This is my family's dinner, and I am asking you to step away." Cordelia looked around the room for support. Found hesitation, averted eyes, the sudden fascination with napkins that signaled withdrawal. Even Harland had taken a half step back. "This is not over," Cordelia said, but the words sounded hollow. She left the podium and walked toward the exit, heels clicking on marble, dignity held together with fury and habit. Dorothea turned to Leora. That was either very brave or very reckless. I keep hearing that tonight. She reached into her clutch and produced a card. My personal number. When the dust settles, call me. I would like to discuss what proximity to charity actually looks like. Before Leora could respond, three strangers approached her. A woman who had married into wealth and spent a decade being treated as an outsider. A tech founder whose accent still got him dismissed despite his net worth. A retired teacher who had been invited as a token guest and had not spoken to anyone all night. They all said the same thing in different words. Thank you for saying what we could not. The morning after hit like a freight train. Leora woke to 43 missed calls. The Aldenmere Register had run the story at 2 in the morning. Cale Merton's byline, front page. Cleaning woman confronts Aldenmere elite, exposes social performance. There was a photograph of her standing at the table. She looked calm in the image, more calm than she had felt. The garnet dress caught the light, and her mother's gold chain was visible at her throat. The comments were a civil war. Half the city calling her a hero. The other half calling her everything from a gold digger to an attention seeker. Someone had already dug up her Harrowell enrollment records. Her life was being excavated in real time by strangers with opinions. She turned off her phone, made coffee with shaking hands. At 10, there was a knock at her door. Rennick stood in the hallway, carrying a paper bag from the bakery on Vasek Street. Breakfast, he said. She let him in. He sat on her floor because there was only one chair and it was covered in books. Cordelia's lawyers called my lawyers at 7, he said, threatening a defamation suit. Can she win? No. Everything you said was opinion or verifiable truth. But she will try to drain you until you apologize. I will not apologize. I know. That is why my legal team sent a response at 8. She withdrew the threat by 9:30. You did not have to do that. Yes, I did. She was using the legal system as a weapon against someone who told the truth. What happens now? She asked. With us. Whatever this is. I do not know, he said. 3 weeks ago, you were a name on an employee roster. Now you are the most talked about person in Aldenmere, and I am trying to figure out how I went from planning a power play to sitting on your floor eating almond pastries. That afternoon, after Rennick left, Leora found something she had not looked at in years, a journal her mother had kept during her first years in Aldenmere. Most of the entries were in cravats, practical notes about grocery prices and bus routes. But near the end, there was an entry in English, written in Hannah's careful handwriting. I am afraid I have taught Leora to be too quiet, to make herself small so the world will not notice her. I wanted to protect her, but maybe I have only taught her to disappear. The date was 2 months before Hannah died. Leora sat on her mattress, journal in her hands, and let the tears come. Not grief, exactly. Recognition. Her mother had seen it, had known, had worried about the same thing Leora was only now beginning to fix. She picked up her phone, ignored the notifications, sent one text to Dr. Yael Stenberg. I am ready to come back. I want to finish what I started. The next months moved like water finding its level. Leora re-enrolled at Harrowell, night classes and independent study, fitting coursework around hospital visits and the strange new shape of her public life. The attention faded as attention always does, but the ripples continued. Dorothea Castellane called as promised. They met at a quiet restaurant far from the society circuit. Dorothea arrived in jeans, looking nothing like the woman who had commanded the heritage dinner. They talked for 2 hours about what real philanthropy could look like, about moving money closer to the people it was supposed to help. Dorothea funded a pilot program at St. Maren's, behavioral health support for families of long-term patients, Leora designed it, built on her research into how power dynamics and resource scarcity affected family decision-making during medical crises. It was small, imperfect, underfunded. It was real. She resigned from the cleaning crew. Gabriella hugged her in the break room and told her not to forget where she came from. Leora said that was impossible, since where she came from was the only reason she knew where she was going. Her relationship with Rennick evolved slowly, carefully, like two people learning a language neither of them had spoken before. They argued about his need for control and her refusal to be managed. They ate cheap food in her apartment and expensive food at places he chose, and gradually found the territory between those two worlds where they could meet as equals. Rennick began divesting. Not all of it. Not overnight. But the holdings that kept him up at night. The contracts secured through intimidation. The relationships maintained through leverage rather than trust. He redirected capital into community development that would never make him richer, but might let him sleep. Tomasz finished his treatment, walked out of St. Maren's on a Tuesday afternoon in October, thin and tired and alive. Leora was there. Rennick was there, standing at a distance, giving the moment to the family it belonged to. Tomasz looked at him and nodded once. Not forgiveness, exactly. Acknowledgement. 6 months after the dinner, Leora defended the first chapter of her dissertation. Dr. Stenberg sat in the front row and did not bother hiding her tears. When it was over, Yael pulled her aside. "This is exceptional work," she said. "You are writing with authority I have never seen from you before. It is lived experience now, not theory. And that makes it dangerous and necessary and exactly what the field needs." 2 years after an elevator door closed on the wrong floor, Leora Missani graduated from Harrowell University with highest honors. Her dissertation, Invisible Hierarchies, Power Performance, and The Unobserved Self in Closed Social Systems, was selected for publication. She accepted a fellowship at Harrowell, splitting her time between research and the family support program at St. Maren's, which had expanded to 4 hospitals. Gabriella attended the graduation ceremony. She sat beside Dorothea Castellane and Carmen Solano, the receptionist from the 42nd floor, who had quietly become one of Leora's fiercest advocates after watching the Heritage Dinner footage online. Tomasz was there, healthy, enrolled in pre-med classes at the community college, alive in ways that mattered beyond biology. Rennick was there, in the audience. No cameras, no entourage. Just a man watching the woman he loved accept a degree she had earned twice, once through brilliance and once through survival. After the ceremony, they gathered at a restaurant in the East Quarter, a family place with checkered tablecloths and a menu in 2 languages. They ate and laughed and told stories about the night that had changed all of their lives. Later, Rennick and Leora walked through the neighborhood where she had grown up, past the dry cleaners where she had lived, past the bus stop where she had waited in the dark before dawn shifts, past the hospital where her brother had almost died and then had not. "I have something," Rennick said. He stopped walking, reached into his coat. A small box, old, worn leather. Inside was a ring, not a diamond. An emerald, deep green set in a thin gold band worn smooth by decades of another woman's hand. "It was my grandmother's," he said, "Nada Dragon. She was the only person in my family who ever told my father he was wrong. She was a seamstress in the old country before they came here. She used to say that the strongest thread is the one that has been broken and retied." Leora looked at the ring, looked at him. "Leora Missani," he said, "I fell in love with you in an elevator because you did the one thing nobody does around me. You said nothing. And then you spent the next 2 years saying everything that needed to be said, and I want to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of someone that brave. Will you marry me?" She thought about the elevator, about the wrong button, about the hands she had hidden behind her back, and the man who had noticed them anyway, about her mother's coat remade into armor, about Gavriella's bathroom mirror and the woman who had looked back at her in garnet wool, about Tomasz walking out of the hospital, about standing up when everyone wanted her to sit down. Yes, she said. Yes. He put the ring on her finger. It fit like it had been waiting for her. They stood on the sidewalk in the East Quarter, holding each other while the city moved around them, and for the first time in as long as she could remember, Leora Masani did not feel invisible. She felt like exactly who she was. And that was enough. That was everything. Cordelia Ashworth had left Aldenmere 8 months after the dinner, moved south, started over. Leora hoped she had found something real. Cale Mertens published a follow-up piece on the anniversary. Where is Leora Masani now? It tracked the program at St. Maren's, the dissertation, the quiet revolution of a woman who had stopped being invisible and started being impossible to ignore. The last line of the article was a quote from Leora. He had asked her what she wanted people to take from her story. That the elevator is never the wrong one, she said. Sometimes you end up exactly where you need to be. You just have to decide whether to hide your hands or show them. She chose to show them. Every scar, every crack, every callus, every line that mapped the distance between who she had been and who she had become. And the world, finally, looked back.